Welcome everyone, Barbecue here with a full and comprehensive guide to completing Kobold Undercity on the DAoC Eden server. As a reminder, you can navigate between the chapters by using the timestamps in the description below. So the first step is going to be to get the quest from the Kobold Grand Master, which is going to be located by the Labyrinth entrance in your main city. You are then going to teleport to Yarly's farm if you are on Albion and head to the location shown on the screen. If you are on Hib or Mid, I have also shown those locations and their respected zones on the screen for you. All you have to do is kill the Hex Master, it can be easily soloed, and then you are going to teleport back to Camelot, return to the Kobold Grandmaster, and turn the quest in. Once everyone has turned the quest in, gather by the entrance, select the Kobold Grandmaster NPC, and you can port in using the dialog box. Alright, our first boss is going to be Gallagos. This boss has a few different mechanics, which you can see in the bottom right hand corner. For every boss, the mechanics will be listed in the same spot so you can quickly reference them. So the first mechanic that's going to happen is going to be at 90%, and it is called Deciding Fate. Basically, in your chat box in the broadcast window, he's going to give each group member a prompt. If you've ever played Simon Says, you can kind of think of this boss as that game. He's basically going to tell you to stay on land or to get in the water. At 90% in your dialog box, it's going to tell you that he either grants you access or denies you access to the well. Here you can see what the prompt looks like. First, he gives you a warning a couple of percent before, and then gives you the prompt at 90%. You can see here that I was denied, so that means I need to stay on land. Regardless of if you get in the water or stay on land, you need to stay there for about 6 seconds, because if you are in the wrong place after 6 seconds, you will explode. After the 6 seconds, you can go ahead and get back on land and reset. There's a couple of things to note here. One is that every group member gets an individual call, meaning that some will have to go in and some will have to stay out. Secondly, it's important for the cleric and the tank to communicate, because if one goes in and the other one has to stay up, they might lose line of sight of each other. So you can see that for the first call, I moved to the edge to ensure that my cleric who was in the water had line of sight of me. Here you can see the second mechanic of the boss fight, which is the electric eels. These will pop up at certain percents in the waterways, so you need to make sure that nobody is in the water when these eels spawn. If you are, whoever's close enough to them is going to get nuked by chain lightning, which is going to spread to the entire group, and it does a ton of damage. A great way to avoid the eels is to just stop DPS whenever Gallagos makes a call for people to move into the water or to stay on land. And here we have the last mechanic of the boss fight. It's going to be the adds, which are the Hex Masters. There's going to be one on each side of the room, so the tank can stun and burn one down with 1 DPS, while the range stun or the secondary slammer can stun the one on the opposite side of the room and burn that down as well with secondary DPS. Alternatively, you can mez one while you stun and kill the other, and then stun and kill the one you mezzed. Okay, we've seen all 3 mechanics of the boss fight now, so now it's just going to be on repeat, and we can watch the rest of the fight play out. If you do need to get into the water while the eels are up, there is a safe spot in between the eels. You just kind of have to feel it out. But imagine 2 circles that are almost touching with a safe spot in between them. Basically, they have a AoE radius that you can thread the needle of. Okay, the next fight is going to be Hexa. Hexa's main mechanic is that she is going to teleport you to a new section of the dungeon every 25%, and she's going to be doing a unique mechanic every time she takes you to a new spot. So in this first area here, she is going to be throwing boulders at the person who is farthest away from the group. You can see here that everyone is stacked by this mushroom plant, while the cleric is in the very far back up the ramp by the back 2 doors. Hexa will then throw a boulder up one side of the ramp, and the cleric just has to run to the other side until the boulder despawns. Then she's going to attempt to throw a boulder at the cleric again, this time the opposite direction, and the cleric is once again just going to run back the direction he came from until the boulder despawns again. You'll also notice a paralyzer totem spawned on top of the cleric. This will also spawn on the person farthest away from the group, and it pulses a 9-second stun. This is to ensure that nobody stands in a spot that can cheese the boss where boulders can never reach. The cleric has to run back and forth avoiding this totem, or you can have a confuse class confuse the totem and it will despawn. Once Hexa reaches 75%, she is going to teleport us for the first time. Make sure that nobody is moving because it is possible that you could fall off this bridge you see here. In this phase here, all the casters and the cleric are all going to stack together, and it is the tank's job to hold Hexa in place while slowly backwalking her out of the fire rings that she drops. Now notice I said to backwalk her, and you notice I did not do that in the video, and I ate a back stun due to this and had to purge it. If I didn't have purge there, this would have been a wipe because the fire rings do 2,500 damage, I think it is, per tick. So you can see she drops rings, I backwalk just enough to where I'm standing outside of them. If you move too much, you will run out of space. And that's all she's going to do for this phase here. At 50%, she's going to teleport us again to a long, narrow bridge. Once again, it is important to not move. Your tank is going to run through Hexa and take her to one side of the bridge, never turning your back to her, and the rest of the team is going to stack up at the opposite side of the bridge. She is going to then throw boulders at your group, which you can see here. These boulders need to be tab targeted and destroyed immediately. At the moment, you can confuse boulders to instantly kill them, but if this gets patched in the future, you do need to target and destroy the boulders. We are going to get ported again at 25% to another long, narrow bridge. This time, everyone's going to get ported to one side. The tank is going to remain where he stands with Hexa, and the rest of the group is going to run to the opposite side of the bridge and continue DPSing. Once again, this is a fire ring phase, so I'm just going to slowly backwalk out of the rings until she gets down to the next teleporting percentage. Somewhere around 10 to 12%, she's going to teleport us one last time to what I like to call her throne room, and there's going to be 2 red ads next to her. What you want to do is run her all the way down the ramp with the tank. This way you pull her away from the group because she can AoE erupt the group, and the CC class is going to CC these ads. You can use AoE Mez and use Hexa as an anchor, which is a great strategy here. If you do not CC the ads in time, they will heal Hexa, and they will also cast more fire rings in this room, which will cause a lot of havoc. So try to CC them and make sure they're never an issue. Once Hexa is dead, continue all the way down the ramp until you can't go down anymore, then continue up the center door. Do not go out the wrong door, which is the right door. If you do go out this door, you will immediately pull this guy right here, and it will most likely wipe the group. The next boss is going to be Ignis. Ignis has a very simple mechanic where he's going to grow slowly over time. The bigger he gets, the more damage he does. So there's going to be two phases to this fight. The first phase is what we call the snowball phase. In this phase, we're going to be going into these doors on the right-hand side here. I'm going to go ahead and tank Ignis. What you can do as the main tank is you can go ahead and taunt him a few times and then go ahead and engage the boss. You and your healer are going to stay outside. You can see that my teammates have gone in these rooms on the right-hand side here. There are orange mobs inside these rooms. You need to kill the mobs, which are going to then drop snowballs into a random person's inventory. You ideally want at least 2 snowballs, probably one for the healer and one for the CC class. And you're going to put them on your quick bar and use them just like an item. Target Ignis and start throwing them at Ignis. Throwing the snowballs at Ignis is going to cause him to shrink in size. And once he gets back down to around the size he started, you can go ahead and start DPS. Now, it is important to continue snowballing him throughout the entire fight, so at least 2 people need to be in charge of this. There's only 2 mechanics that you really need to worry about now. The first mechanic is that probably 2 or 3 times throughout the fight, he's going to call a random player's name in the broadcast window, and they need to turn around and run away from everyone in the group, or they are going to get AoE stunned, which you can see right here. He's also going to spawn an ad every 25%, starting at 75, so at 75, 50, and 25%. If you have a very high DPS group composition, like Albion does with Heretics, you can just mez and ignore these ads and burn the boss all the way through. However, other realms have an issue doing this, so you may need to just kill the ads one by one as they spawn. Do remember that there is going to be more names called, so pay attention to the broadcast window. Make sure you don't get your group stunned. You can see here we actually have the heretic isolated by himself, so as long as he doesn't get called, he knows no matter what, the DPS isn't going to be interrupted. The next boss is Mekanikz. Now, it's going to look like he has a lot going on in the bottom right-hand corner here, but I assure you it is just the same combo over and over, which you can see right here on your screen. So when the repair droid spawns, which is the red con, we are going to mez it right away. We're going to damage the boss a little more until the orange spawns, which is the inhibitor droid. We are going to stun and kill the inhibitor droid right away, and then we are going to go back to the red that we had mezzed. We're going to stun and kill the red and go back on the boss. The red repair droid will always spawn on the boss himself, which makes it an easy target to mez, and the orange inhibitor droid will spawn on a random member of the group. The reason why we mez the red first and take care of the orange is because the red will heal the boss if we let it live. The orange will silence the entire group if we let it live. So the orange is the priority target. It dies first, and then we kill the red. Now you will also see that I have been moving the boss, and every 10% in the bottom right there is a hurricane. The hurricane is just what Mekanikz drops on the ground. It is a small buff circle that will give him a stacking strength con buff over time. So the tank needs to move the boss every 10%. Then we're just going to rinse and repeat the same cycle over and over and over. The tank is going to move the boss every 10%. We're going to mez the reds as they spawn and immediately stun and kill the oranges as they spawn. Now there is going to be a new phase of the boss fight that starts when he hits 30%. So what we're going to do here is we're going to hard stop DPS at 35% when the last red spawns, and we are going to stun it and kill it right away. There is no orange that comes with this red, which is kind of strange, so you're free to just kill this red immediately. Once the boss gets near 35%, the main tank should bring it all the way back up to this fountain here. And you want to put the boss right next to this mushroom tree branch thing with your back facing the group. So you're going to put your back all the way up to this mushroom plant, and then you're going to spin the boss around. What's going to happen at 30% is that the boss is going to call a bunch of robots that are going to swarm everybody, and they're going to cast ice PBA on the entire group permanently and constantly. It's only going to do 1 damage to you, but it's enough to interrupt you. However, you can see that all my group mates are sitting in this fountain where this kobold is, this statue. This fountain is going to activate right at 30% when he calls the robots, and it's going to give us Mastery of Concentration. This means that even though it looks like we're being interrupted, we can still cast spells. It will look like you are not casting, but I promise you, keep hitting the button and you will. Right at 30%, even though we're getting swarmed with bots, he's also going to spawn an orange inhibitor droid, and he's also going to spawn a buff circle on the ground. So a lot of things are happening at 30%. The tank needs to backwalk him. Everyone needs to make sure they don't panic from all the robots that are PBAing you, and everyone needs to make sure they burn the orange right away. Also, in this last phase here, since things do get super hectic, what we like to do is just mez the reds and ignore them from now on. You will see that a mez did get broken on the red, unfortunately there, so we just had to kill it right away. We're now going to focus the orange. The tank is still moving the boss every 10%. Here comes 10%, we're moving the boss again, the red comes up, we're going to mez the red and ignore it, and then we'll full burn the boss until he's dead. There is one last orange that will spawn at the end, but as long as you focus DPS on the boss, you should kill him before it silences you. Alright, the next boss here is Siege Master. Now, Siege Master has a unique mechanic where you have to use the catapults in the room here in order to do damage to him during certain phases of the fight. There are 4 catapults in the room, and we are going to be utilizing 3 of them. We can call these catapults 1, 2, and 3. Note that catapult 3 is in the far back left corner all the way past the bridge in the very back of the room. We will come back and reference this image in a second. Okay, so we're going to pull Siege Master and tank him right in front of the bridge. If you do have a bolt class with you, go ahead and spin the boss around so he cannot block the bolts that are cast on him. He is going to cast PBA disease, so you want to keep him a little bit away from the group and just tank him by yourself, and just have that disease cured from you ASAP. The boss also does have a reactionary stun style, so he can stun you. Be prepared to purge it if you need to. At 92%, he's going to create a bubble in the room, which you can see here. Everyone needs to get inside the bubble because he's about to explode the entire room, and if you do not get in the bubble, you will die. Once the boss is at 80%, he's going to disappear and teleport to the other side of the bridge, and this is where we are going to use the catapults to launch over and do damage to him. The boss needs to be hit 4 different times with catapults, and the tank needs to go over first to initiate the phase. So everyone needs to take a catapult 1 time. The launch order you can see in the bottom left is as follows. The tank will go over first from catapult 1. While they're in the air, they're going to click on the boss and use the engage ability on the boss while they are falling down from the catapult. Click on the boss and spam it on him while you're falling. The healer is then going to launch over from catapult number 2 and is going to heal the tank immediately. Now, while the tank has the boss on the other side of the wall, he's going to be moving the boss into position for the cleric's catapult to shoot the cleric onto the boss. Then the tank is going to move back to where he landed, and each DPS class is going to hop into the catapult number 1 that the tank came from, and they are each going to fire over themselves. This will be hits number 2 and 3. After this, the tank is going to move the boss 1 more time to a specific position where catapult 3 is going to shoot the CC class, and that will be hit number 4 and the final hit that we need to end the phase. Once all 4 hits have been completed and the boss is at 60%, it is time to run up the left ramp and reset back to where we came from. All right, that sounded like a lot, but let's see how it plays out. All right, so the boss is going to disappear to the other side of the wall. I'm going to be the first to go over as the tank from catapult number 1. In order to use the catapults, you right-click on the name, the green text that says bucket. Then you right-click on the catapult itself, which will bring up the submenu for you to fire. While you're in the air, mine actually glitched out a little bit, and this will happen to you sometimes. You need to engage the boss either in the air or as soon as you land. You can see here that it does give you a few courtesy seconds for you to land and kind of get situated. Now, once I'm landed and I have the boss safely engaged here, I'm going to move him to this dead cow on the ground here. These dead cows are actually markers for where the catapults are going to land. So I am super low health here, but I am using engage, so I am safe. I tell the cleric to fire over. The cleric fires over. As soon as he lands and heals me back up, I'm going to move the boss back to where I originally landed, and the boss has been hit 1 time so far. While I'm doing this, the DPS class is getting in the catapult that I originally took, and they're going to fire over as well. That's hit number 2 right there. We're going to hang out a second. The catapult does take a few seconds to rearm on the other side, so the other DPS class is just waiting to get in. And you can see they're going to get in and fire shortly. Here they come in the air. This is hit number 3. There it is. And now I'm going to move the boss for the 4th hit all the way to the closest cow to the wall. The reason we're doing this is at 60%, we need to reset back to the room that we came from, and this gives us the shortest running distance to have to do that. Once I'm set on the last cow here, I tell the CC class to fire over. That is the 4th hit, taking the boss to 60%, and then we are going to run up this ramp that you can see here, and we are going to reset to where we originally came from. All right, so now we're basically redoing the entire phase, except there's going to be a couple of little extra things that happen. One of them being archers are going to spawn on that bridge that you can see, and that's going to happen at 50%. So instead of facing the opposite side of the room where we originally started, we're now going to be facing the bridge, ready to kill the ads when they spawn. And you can see they spawned here. A good strategy here is to DPS the ads from left to right, while the CC class takes control of them from right to left. So now at 40%, the boss once again goes over to the other side of the room, and we are going to repeat the catapult phase that we did earlier. Once again, after the fourth hit, we're going to run him up over the ramp and put him back in the middle of the room, and we're going to get ready for the very last burn phase. The boss is going to make one last bubble at 16%. You need to respect it and get inside of it just like the one you did earlier, and then you want to DPS him down to about 12%. At around 12%, he's going to cast a big Ice Wizzy PBAE on you. You need to wait until he casts that on you and then go ahead and resume damage on him. However, your CC class needs to be ready to spam AoE Mez on the boss because he is going to spawn 3 ads right on top of the group, which you can see here. And if you're spamming AoE Mez on the ads before they spawn, you'll get the Mez off before they become an issue. Once the ads are mezzed, you can just run out of the bubble and resume DPS. If for some reason the mez doesn't land on the ads, they are very slow. You can just run away from them. They will eventually catch up to you though, so you will need to either CC cycle them, root them, or do whatever. But that is Siege Master. The last boss is going to be Termina. Termina's main mechanic is that she is going to spawn totems around the room, and they're going to spawn on a random member of the group. We're going to have to acquire a key item in order to deal with these totems, and that is going to come from this green colored mob, which you can see right here. This mob actually isn't targetable at the moment, but it will be as soon as you pull the boss. When you do pull the boss, she's going to start spawning totems around the room. There are 4 different types of totems, which you can see on the screen here. Each totem has a different effect, but they're all going to do an AoE pulse, so you need to run away from it if it is a bad totem. Now, the reason the beam totem says it is a wipe is because if you stay in the beam totem too long, it's going to teleport you to the top of the room where there are 5 purple bats, which you can see here, and I can almost promise you it's going to be a wipe every time. There is, however, one good totem out of the 4, and that is the bear totem named after the animal. Please do not get confused between the bear totem and the beam totem. One determines if you get extra damage and casting speed, the other one determines if you die. You'll know when the bear totem spawns because it will make a ding noise, kind of like when you craft something in Dark Age of Camelot. When you see the bear totem, everyone should stack into it because it's going to give you buffs for additional casting speed and melee damage. If you're doing this on Alb and you have a heretic, just have the heretic stay where he is and continue ramping. The bear totem doesn't help him at all. Okay, so how do we get rid of the totems? We need to kill this green mob as soon as we pull the boss. When we kill this green mob, she's going to drop a key item called a Kobold flute. Just like the snowball from the Ignis fight, one person is going to put this on their quick bar, and it is going to be their responsibility to use the flute on the totems. Then you'll notice in the bottom right, Termina is also going to summon waves of cobras around every 20%, and there is going to be one blue colored cobra, that is the queen cobra. The person who has the flute needs to target the blue cobra and use the flute on that cobra, and it will destroy all the other cobras. I will show you that in just a minute here, but before we start, let's go over a bunch of tips for this fight. The first tip is, since totems spawn on a random member of the group, instead of having everyone stand in a random spot, it's best to have people stick together and move together. Except for the tank, who can hold the boss in the middle of the room, and if you have a heretic, you always want them to stay separate, so there's only ever a 1 in 5 chance that a totem spawns on them. As of the date of the release of this video, you can confuse every totem except for the poison totem, and it will one-shot them. The flute should go to the heal or CC class, so the DPS can just focus on moving out of totems and continuing on the boss. The last tip is that you should never ever tab target in this boss encounter because your tab will target the bats at the top of the cave, and you're gonna nuke them and they're gonna come down and wipe the entire group. Okay, so let's watch the fight play out. The tank is going to pull Termina, take her to the middle of the room. DPS is going to immediately go on Arista. Totems can still spawn during this phase, so there can be a poison totem that spawns on a member. Just move out of it if that happens. You can see it spawned on the tick. Once Arista is dead, give the flute to the CC or heal class whose job it's going to be to get rid of the totems. Now in this group we have 2 melee and 2 caster and 1 tick. So you can see here, remember when I said we're going to stick together and move together, the cleric and I, the sork, are going to stand here in DPS, and whenever a totem spawns on us, we are going to run clockwise around the room. Whenever a totem spawns on the tick, he's running out of it and restarting DPS. You can see here that a bear totem spawned. Remember, bear is the only good totem, so you can get in the bear totem and resume DPS. There are going to be waves of snakes that spawn soon, so it is the person who has the flute's job to target that blue snake, which you can see right here, and use the flute on it. Once you use the flute on the blue snake, all the other snakes will die, and it also clears all the totems in the room, basically resetting the fight. So that's essentially it. You've seen all the mechanics of the boss fight now. It's just really important to move together as a cohesive unit so you don't overwhelm the person who's trying to take care of the totems and the snakes. Remember, beam is very, very bad. Bear is very, very good. So totems are spawning, we're moving clockwise around the room. When the snake wave comes, we target the blue snake, use the flute on it, resume DPS. The tanks have actually gotten really lucky here. I might have missed one, but I don't think I've seen any totems spawn on them. If totems do spawn on the tanks, they just run and shimmy in and out, and then whoever has the flute will kill the totem, and then they can move the boss back into the middle. There's a totem that spawns on him here. You can actually see that I confused this one instead of using the flute on it. The confuse is much faster cast time. It can be interrupted, but generally there's nothing here to interrupt you while you're doing it. Remember that bear totem is good. It gives you buffs. You can see the merc came in, he grabbed his melee damage buff, and then he can go back on the boss. This fight is honestly one of the easiest fights in the dungeon when you get it down pat, but it does have a lot of moving parts, especially if you guys aren't communicating well with moving around the room with the totems. One last snake wave at the very end. Once again, we're targeting that blue snake and using the flute on it. And that is GG. That is the whole Kobold Undercity dungeon run for you. You might have noticed that there is a mob counter in the middle of the screen. That is never accurate. The quest only requires that you kill all 6 bosses and you can go turn it in back at the Kobold Grandmaster. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it, and I hope this guide helps you a lot. Good luck out there.